Hi, I'm Jim Foster from Rosilla Reviews, and today we're taking a look at Forbidden Island by GameRay. Now this is a pretty popular game, and it comes in a nice tin box. Plays 2 to 4 players, about 30 minutes, and recommended for ages 10 and up. So the objective of this game is, between the 2 and 4 players, is your adventurers who are trying to steal or take this treasure from this island. And the island, unfortunately for you, is also sinking at the same time. So the goal is to try to grab the treasure before the island sinks. Now, each of the players are represented by these miniatures. And as you can see, there's different colors, and each of the different colors represent a different adventurer with some special abilities. So there's 6 different types of adventurers. And in the beginning, you randomly mix them up and you hand them to folks. And let's say there's 4 players, you'll throw 2 of them away and they just won't be used during the game. So each player has special abilities. For example, this messenger right here, he has a special ability to hand a treasure card to any other player as one of his actions. Now typically, to get a treasure card from someone, they both have to be in the same square. So it's kind of nice to be able to pass this over to anybody at any time. There's also some other ones, for example, like the pilot. He's able to fly folks around and fly himself around, plus get you off the island. So let's talk about, how do you collect a treasure? So let's say we're collecting the flame. In order to collect the flame, somebody will need to get 4 flame cards, and they will need to get on a tile that has the flame in the corner. So once they have the 4 flame cards and they get onto a tile with the flame, there's always, for each treasure, there's always 2 tiles with that treasure on it. So when they get to there, and let's say we have the red guy. Let's say he gets there and he's got the 4 cards. He's on the flame, on the thing. He hands in his 4 cards as an action, and he collects the treasure. Now once the treasure is his, it's his forever for this game, and he doesn't necessarily have to worry about losing these lands. Because what happens is these lands will go underwater. You can see here's color, and then you flip it over, and all of a sudden it looks like it's underwater. So parts of the land will go underwater, and if you don't shore them up to get them back above water, they'll disappear. So once you have the treasure, if the ones that have the treasure are gone, it's not a big deal unless it's a critical pathway to get back to the landing pad. Now, it is a big deal, however, if these guys sink and you lose them before you've collected the treasure. Because if you lose both tiles that have a particular treasure and you haven't collected the treasure yet, game's over, you lose. Probably the most important tile on this game is the helicopter, Fool's Landing. Reason why is, after you've collected, your team has collected the 4 treasures, all 4 of you need to get on Fool's Landing in order to get off the island. So if you lose this guy, game over, it's done. Unlike most games where everyone is competing against each other, on this game everyone wins or everyone loses. So you have to cooperate with each other. So when it's somebody's turn, not only is it okay, but it's actually encouraged for the other players to give advice. They'll tell you, hey, why don't you move here? Why don't you do this, this, and this? Ultimately, it's up to the player to decide what exactly he wants to do for this particular turn. So on the back of the rolls, the adventurer cards, there are some helpful instructions that remind you what's the order of play and the different actions you can do. So in the order of play, there's 3 different phases. The first is to take up to 3 actions. Now, the different actions you can do is you can move, you can shore up, you can give a treasure card, or you can capture a treasure. And let's take a look at that. So let's say we're black, and we basically are taking a move. So since we have 3 actions, we could, 1, 2, 3, move 3 different spots. Or let's say Fool's Landing is underneath water. I could say, you know what, as one of my actions, I want to shore this up. And to shore it up, you just flip it over. That takes one of your actions. A different action is, as I mentioned, let's say somebody is collecting fire. Let's say red, he's collecting the fire cards. And typically, a common strategy is for each of the different players to be collecting a specific type of treasure card to one of the treasures. So let's say red, he's collecting fire, and black, he's got the fire card. So as one of his actions, as long as they're on the same tile, he can hand over this treasure card over to the red player. The last thing he can do is, if he has 4 cards of the same type of treasure and he's on a tile that has that treasure icon on it, he can go ahead and collect that treasure. The next phase is to draw 2 treasure cards. That's represented by this deck. Now typically when you grab 2 treasure cards, you'll see that it has 2 different types of treasure pictures on this, which then you'll want to try to give to your teammates depending on if that's the type of treasure that they're trying to collect. Now there are 3 special cards that you'll sometimes grab. One is the sandbag. So typically on your turn, one of the actions you can do, as long as you're next to the land that's underwater, you can go ahead and shore it up. What sandbag does is it allows you to shore up a piece of land at any time, so it doesn't have to be your turn. For example, let's say it's Red's turn, and at the end of his turn, he grab a flood card that puts Fool's Landing underwater. Black, let's say Silver has this card. He can say, you know what, I'm just going to play this right now. I'm going to shore this up with the sandbags, and what that would do is that would make that go over, and he discards this card. Another special card is Helicopter Lift. So with Helicopter Lift, you can move 1 or more players as long as they're on the same tile to a different spot. So let's say Red has this, and he's like, you know what, Blue, I want to move you over to the Temple of the Moon so you can go collect your treasure. And then you can discard this. Or, let's say Red's like, you know what, me and Black, we're on the same tile. Let's go ahead and both of us go over to the Cave of Embers. And then he discards it. So you'll get multiple of these cards throughout the gameplay. Now if you don't have a pilot, Blue is pilot, let's say he's not one of the adventurers that you picked. Let's say you have Green Hair instead. Well, you don't have any pilot that's going to be able to take you off the island at Fool's Landing. So when you get these cards, the team does, you'll need to have one team member keep one of these guys. And that way, when all 4 of you at the end of the game, you've collected all the treasures, it's time to get off the island, you can use this card to get off the island. So phase 1 was take 3 action cards, or take up to 3 actions. Phase 2 was draw 2 treasure cards, and phase 3 is draw flood cards. Now the flood cards look like this. And when you draw 2 flood cards, you'll see that it has the same picture as the land on here. So we have a Fool's Landing. So what happens is this guy flips over, and then we have the Cave of Embers. So we're going to flip this guy over. So now both of these are underneath water. And I put this into a discard pile. Now let's say somebody else is playing, and when they pull out the treasure cards, they pull it over and like, ooh, there's water rising. So water rising has a very specific action that needs to occur. The game provides this. Now normally when you're starting the game, you would put it on novice, which starts the water level at 2. As you get better, GameRight did a great thing here. They made it where you can actually start the water level higher at Elite or Legendary, which makes the game a lot harder to win. So right here, we're going to start at Novice, and we got a Water Rises card. So the first thing we do is we up this notch. Now, since we started at Novice, we still are under 2 flood cards. However, if we get another Water Rises, we'll be at 3. That means at the end of every turn, somebody will have to draw 3 flood cards, which makes 3 parts of the land go under and sink. Now, the next part of this water rises, part number 2, is you take the cards that you've already played in the flood cards and you shuffle them up and you put them back on top of the pile. So you don't shuffle the whole flood pile, you only shuffle the cards that you've played so far. So since we've only played 2 cards, we know that the 2 parts that have already been flooded, those are going to be the next 2 cards that come up. So this is pretty important just because what you'll find is the parts that are already flooding, those are going to be the first ones that get lost on the island. So as different pieces flood, it's important for players to get over there and shore them up, especially if they're critical ones like Fool's Landing or if they have a treasure on it. Let's say for whatever reason somebody doesn't shore it up. Maybe they're just too far away from the property, the land, or maybe they just decide not to. For whatever reason, at the end of the turn, they grab 2 cards, and because they grabbed a Fool's Landing and this is already underwater, boom, this is gone, so game is ended, and this property is gone. Let's say they're not critical ones. Let's say Lost Lagoon is underwater, and let's say Lost Lagoon is picked again. So it disappears, but the game's not over, it's just now that there's a blank spot there. And depending on if it's too many that get in the path, it could make it a lot harder to get back to Fool's Landing. So as I mentioned, once all the treasures are collected, everyone's here. You either have a pilot or you have a helicopter lift and you're off the island. So my family, we've played this multiple times. We really like this game. And what we found is in the beginning, we were pretty much used to competitive games. And so in the beginning, we really wanted to boss each other around and have the master plan and tell everybody what to do. That, of course, didn't really work out that great just because we kind of butted heads. And so at some point, we had to get into a rhythm where everyone gave their opinion, but ultimately the person's turn it was, he gets to decide. And as we got better at strategizing together, we found that novice to normal is too easy. We'd win each and every time. So what we typically do now is we go ahead and put it on elite and legendary, and it makes things a little bit harder. Because it is a cooperative game, I can see companies using this when you have some strong-willed people who need to work together and you're having just a fun game to help build up those skills. I could see a company doing this as kind of like an icebreaker, or I could see schools kind of using it as a different way to help teach children to work together too. And they all win or they all lose. We have a lot of fun with this game and we play it on a regular basis, so I highly recommend it, and thank you for watching.